Good stewards make certain Jesus likes the way they smell. So how should we smell? Should we smell like a freshly mowed field in springtime? I love that smell. Should we smell like a bouquet of very fragrant flowers? Should we smell like our first puppy love, going to our first prom? All wonderful smells. But no, that's not what Jesus has in mind. What Jesus has in mind, we heard just a minute or two ago in our gospel passage. Jesus wants us to smell like sheep. Jesus says, look, I'm the good shepherd. So good, I'll even lay down my life for my sheep. Now, of course, he's speaking metaphorically. He laid down his life on a cross. Let's go back 2,000 years to Jesus' time. Shepherds were the dregs of society, the bottom dwellers. They weren't educated. They really were mostly street people. They made terrible money for being shepherds. They were outside all the time, so when it was scorching hot, they sweltered. When it was snowing, they were cold. When it rained, they got wet. It was not a fun job. And they were amid sheep all day long. Sheep stink. And they picked up the smell of the animals that they were responsible for. And in the evening, a shepherd took his sheep and put it into a sheepfold, kind of like a corral. And a good shepherd would lie across the opening to the sheepfold, so that if a wolf or any other wild animal wanted to get into the sheepfold and have dinner, they had to go across the shepherd first. He would literally give up his life to save his sheep. And that's what Jesus is telling us he is, and he wants us to become. He's telling us that we need to go out among the needy. Sheep are kind of dumb animals. They need help. A shepherd is their leader. And Jesus is telling us, find the needy in your life and go out and help them. And when you go out and help them, you're going to stink just like them because you're going to be with them. Pope Francis tells us priests all the time, if you don't smell like sheep, you're not a good priest. Because you're not getting out there where the need is. The only thing we don't want when we get to the pearly gates to smell like is ourselves. Because that indicates we've lived a selfish life, away from others. We don't want to smell like money. Here's a modern fable. In a land far, far away, in a time, a long, long time ago, Jacob was a middle-class, maybe even upper middle-class businessman. He was an explorer. He lived in the land of Bland. Jacob desperately wanted to be rich. And he kept, in his explorations, trying to find something that he could convert into true wealth. Well, on one of his trips, Jacob explored the land of Fertilia. And there, he found onions. Now, the land of Bland had no onions. And Jacob loved them, so he got a big wagon load of onions and brought them back to the land of Bland. Brought them to the king. The king loved them. So much so, he said, look, I'm going to give you a wagon full of gold for that wagon full of onions. And immediately, Jacob was a very rich man. But he wanted more, so he kept going back to the land of Fertilia, always looking over his shoulder, making certain no one was following him. He wanted to be the only one who knew the way to Fertilia. And he would come back with garlic, with salt, black pepper, all kinds of other peppers. He made a mint on cayenne. And he became the richest person in the land of Bland. But Jacob, very selfish man, spent very little time with his family. He mostly just partied and bragged. He had hanging in his office above his desk a sign that said, I smell like money. Well, Jacob died at 82, took that long walk to the pearly gates, and when he got there, asked again the appropriate question, Lord, may I please come in? And Jesus said, well, I got to check the record. And Jacob said, I'm going to tell you what you're going to find in the record. I was the wealthiest person in the land of Bland. I was super rich. And Jesus said, well, okay. But let me check the record. He came back and he said, Jacob, you can't come in. Jacob said, what do you mean I can't come in? Suppose I buy my way in. Jesus said, come on. You had to leave it all behind. You don't have it anymore. And besides, if you had it, you couldn't buy your way into heaven. Well, why, Lord? Why can't I come into heaven? Just because you smell like money. And Jacob said, well, I had this sign in my office. I like that smell. And Jesus said, the smell of money almost always is the smell of greed. That you spent so much time with money, you weren't spending time giving that money to the poor and the needy. I'm sorry, Jacob. I'd love to let you in, but you cannot come in. What did Damien smell like when he got to the pearly gates? Saint Damien, who left his home to go to Molokai, which at the time was an island filled with lepers. Damien smelled like rotting flesh because he contracted leprosy, helping out the needy on Molokai. What did Mother Teresa smell like when she got to the pearly gates? She smelled like the stench of the streets of Calcutta, India. Because that's where she spent her time, out among the poor and the needy. So much time out there that she took on their smell. So, my sisters and brothers, let's think about it. Now, I'm not telling you you've got to spend time, all your time, under the I-10 overpass at Claiborne Avenue among the homeless. Not a bad thing to do. But no, you don't need to spend all of your time there. Spend your time with your primary responsibility, your family. Smell like your spouse, like your children, like your other family members and friends. Also smell a little bit like the truly poor and the needy. Don't ignore them. My sisters and brothers, we are all called to be good stewards. And good stewards make certain that when they get to the pearly gates, Jesus likes the way they smell.